In the mountain village of Stillwater, where the snow fell silently and the smoke from chimneys rose like gray spirits into the sky, there lived a postman named Paul. He was a quiet man with stooped shoulders and eyes the color of river stones. Every morning, he shouldered his worn leather bag and walked the winding lanes, delivering letters sealed with wax, parcels tied with twine, and the occasional telegram that turned a household pale. But Paul himself received no letters. No one wrote to him. He was a man who carried the words of others but had none of his own. He was the messenger, not the message. The villagers were kind, but they saw him as a piece of furniture useful, reliable, and easily forgotten. It was said in Stillwater, and only whispered, that there existed a certain envelope. It had no stamp, no return address, and no postmark from any known city. It was plain cream-colored paper, sealed with a single drop of red wax that bore no crest. Legend held that this envelope would appear in the most unexpected of places, beneath a pillow, tucked into a coat pocket, or resting on a windowsill, and it would always find its way to the person who most desperately needed the words written inside. Paul had heard the old stories as a boy, but he had dismissed them as bedtime nonsense. Envelopes did not find people. People found envelopes, and only when they paid for the privilege. Then came the winter of the great loneliness. It had been a cruel season. 3 families had moved down to the valley for work. The schoolhouse closed for lack of children. Even the village dogs seemed to howl less, as if they too had given up on conversation. Paul trudged through the knee-deep snow, delivering fewer and fewer letters each day. He felt the hollow ache of being unseen, a ghost among the living. One evening, after a particularly bleak day, he returned to his small cottage at the edge of the wood. He hung his coat on its peg, stamped the snow from his boots, and sat down at his simple wooden table to eat his bread and cheese. That was when he saw it. Resting on his threadbare tablecloth, as if it had always been there, was an envelope. Cream-colored, no stamp, no postmark. Just his name written across the front in flowing, elegant ink that he did not recognize. His heart seized. He picked it up, turning it over. The red wax seal was cool and smooth beneath his thumb. He broke it with trembling fingers, slid out a single sheet of paper, and unfolded it. The words read, "Paul, the mail you carry is not just paper. It is the first cry of a newborn, sent to a grandmother across the sea. It is a soldier's promise to return home. It is a girl's trembling confession of love, and an old man's final goodbye. You are not the messenger, Paul. You are the thread that holds the world together. You are seen, you are needed, you are loved." Paul read the words once, then twice, then a third time, until the ink seemed to blur and his vision swam with tears. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever told him that his simple, weary rounds meant anything at all. He pressed the letter to his chest, and for the first time in years, he felt the cold knot inside him loosen. The next morning, he rose before dawn. He dressed with care. He polished his boots. When he walked through the village, he did not look at the ground. He looked at the faces. He noticed the widow who clutched her son's letter with trembling hands. He saw the young farmer who read his sweetheart's words and laughed aloud with joy. He realized that every piece of paper in his bag was a living thing, carrying the weight of human hearts. He was not a mere carrier. He was a bridge. And the village in turn noticed him. The widow offered him warm tea. The farmer clapped him on the back. Children waved from their windows. Paul had become visible, not because he had changed, but because he had finally seen himself. Weeks passed. The snow melted into mud, and the mud gave way to the first green shoots of spring. One morning, Paul found a new letter in his bag, a real letter, with a stamp and an address. Written in a child's uneven scrawl, it was addressed to him. It read, "Thank you for bringing my papa's letter. He is coming home, Lily." That evening, Paul returned to his cottage and looked for the cream-colored envelope. He wanted to read the words once more, to remind himself of the miracle. But the envelope was gone. The table was bare. He searched every drawer, every pocket, every corner of his home. It had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Yet the words remained etched in his soul. He knew that the envelope's purpose was not to be kept, but to be received. It had found him when he needed it most. And now that he had been filled, it had moved on to find another. Years later, when Paul was old and gray, a young woman came to his door. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. She was a weaver whose loom had been silent for months, for she had lost all belief in her own art. Her fingers, she said, had forgotten how to make beauty. Paul smiled. He said nothing. He simply reached into his pocket and withdrew a cream-colored envelope, no stamp, no return address. He had found it that very morning beneath his pillow. He handed it to her without a word. She broke the seal, read the letter inside, and wept not with sorrow, but with the sudden, overwhelming relief of being understood. As she left, clutching the letter to her heart, Paul looked up at the evening sky. He thought of the words that had once saved him, and he understood now that the envelope was not a thing to be owned. It was a gift that passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart, always finding the one who had forgotten their own worth. It asked for nothing in return. It required no stamp, no payment, no address. It simply arrived, and so it always would. For in a world full of messages, the most powerful one is the one that arrives just in time to remind you that you matter.